All right, well, welcome to spring 2025. It's going to be a good semester with a glorious ending, right? Everybody excited? Good. You excited to be in the course that you've been aiming for the whole time you've been here? We're constantly talking about adding more labs and things that are relevant to forensic chemistry, so we're trying to make it better every year. And so I'm thinking of doing some changes in PChem labs and things like that, but I don't want to tell you too much about that because that just depresses you as you're leaving. I remember the worst. It was just a scarring event when I went to first grade. I met in the playground and I looked into the kindergarten room and I got all new toys. And it was just so sad. I'm looking in there, I was like, man, I would have loved to have played with those. So I just did the same thing to you guys, so I apologize. So hopefully that wasn't as strong. But what we're going to do today is a typical first day class thing. We're going to go through the syllabus, but then I'm going to give just a little bit of foundational discussion on forensic chemistry and forensic science. But y'all have, as part of your CJ minor, right? You've taken some forensic science courses. So this is a little bit of review, hopefully. But then we'll get into the control charting. Now, what I'm going to try to do this semester, I can't promise that I'll do it every lecture, but I'm going to try to stop and start the video to chop the lectures into smaller chunks when I have a particular topic. So then when you go back to review, you can see just the 15 minutes video of a 45-minute lecture or an hour lecture so that you can be more selective in reviewing and those kinds of things. So I'm going to chop today's into 3 different videos. So we'll do the syllabus and then I'll stop it and then we'll start a new one. And that way it'll be a little bit more easy for you to go through the material and find those smaller topics. So let's jump into the syllabus. This is a picture of the book, the current book, the 3rd edition. A lot of the examples in the lecture notes are still in the 2nd edition because the 3rd edition we had to wait a long time for it. The 2nd edition actually went out of print before the 3rd edition came on. And so Suzanne Bell, I think it's got the right target for an undergraduate forensic science course, forensic chemistry course. And so I really liked her book. And so there were other options when the 2nd edition went out of print, and they were either way too deep, sort of at the graduate level of analytical chemistry, or they were way too shallow. And I think hers is right in the target. So I was very happy when the 3rd edition came out. So I highly recommend the book. Again, it's focused on forensic chemistry, not forensic science. And so there's the forensic science really gets more into the legal things and stuff like that, and also things that we don't talk about in chemistry, like tool mark and pattern evidence and things like that. So we're not really dealing too much with those things. We're dealing with the chemistry and maybe the physical properties of the evidence that we're looking at. Same kind of thing with me. If you can't make my office hours, which are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 to 10, then just send me a meeting request on Outlook to williams@shsu.edu. Some of the big ideas for the course. There's really 3 sections to the course, which we'll go over in more detail in a second. But they're the data quality, and then the chemical properties and the physical properties. So those are the big ideas. So looking at evidence that comes in, first of all, people have to trust us. So we have to understand how to handle data and how to know when our data might be suspect. And then also the chemical properties of drugs and arson accelerants and things like that. And then the physical properties that characterize things like fibers or other polymers. The assessment is very similar to what I've done in the past for you guys in PChem. Attendance is 5%, so signing the roster. And it's only 5%, but it's still a nice little gift, 5% for coming to class. I really like for you to come here and learn in a community. We really are isolated too much and doing everything on our own with YouTube and our phones and stuff. And so just make it an effort to be here, to make friends and learn in community. I think it helps the materials stick better. So that's why I support 5% for attendance. But it's also only 5% of your weighted average. So I don't need doctor's notes. There's no excused absences. You get 3 free from the university. Let's say you missed 4. Oh my gosh, you got a 99%. Okay. Multiply that by 0.05. It doesn't even take a whole point off your average. So that 4th absence isn't something you need to stress at all about. Okay. This is mainly also for me to see those people who check out and disappear. It's like if I see that you've been gone for a whole week or more, then I'll try to get a hold of you and email you and start, trying to see what's going on. Homework average and control charts, those are two things that are on your end of the spectrum in terms of work. These are the weekly quizzes, kind of like what we did in PCHEM 1, if you had me as your professor there. It's a real simple multiple choice quiz, or sometimes it's numerical answers. But I do that so that you'll have a good guide for what to study for the test. And so you'll have those weekly quizzes, and then you study those, and the problems don't come directly from them, but I try to make them as close as possible. So I reward those people who really work on a weekly basis and don't procrastinate till the test. So if you put your effort into the homework, then you can review and be prepared for the tests. The tests are pretty high here. We have 3 exams, all worth 25% each. So 75% of your grade is exams. But again, I'll try to make them pretty close to the homework. I do, after that 3rd exam, if you're happy with your grade, this is my gift to you as seniors, then you don't have to take the final. So there's no dropped exam. So listen carefully. I don't drop an exam. So if you do take the final, it figures into your weighted average. It doesn't replace a grade. So don't ever look at an exam and say, I'm going to take my drop. That doesn't apply to this class. You want to do your best on every exam, okay? Because there's no drops. I've always been opposed to that because it really harms you more than you think. So you're supposed to study hard for each exam and learn that material because it may feed into the next exam and the next exam. And if I let you drop an exam, I know I was in your shoes, like, oh man, I'm not prepared for this first exam. I'll take it as my drop. And what that means is you didn't really study that material. And so you've hurt yourself, and then it's hard to recover. So I want everybody to go into the exams with full effort trying to learn that material because you're going to need it going into the further part of the course. If you do miss an exam, try to get a hold of me as soon as possible. You got my phone number. You can leave me a message. You got my email. People are in traffic. There's an accident and the cars are stopped. I get it, so tell me, look, I'm in traffic. I mean, be safe, right? But I'm in traffic. I'm not going to make the exam. Can I take it as soon as I get there? And I'll probably say yes. As soon as you get to campus, we'll find a spot for you in the building to take the exam. That would be ideal, to take it the same day. If, hospitalizations or something like that occur and you can't take it very close to the exam time, then we may just say, all right, I'll count the final for that missing percentage. And so then you would have to take the final to make up for that. It doesn't replace that grade, it counts double. So if you miss the first exam, then your final now counts as as half of your 75%. So it's a lot of pressure on that final, but it is a way to recover from that missed percentage. The homework due every Saturday night. It doesn't mean I want you to work on the weekends necessarily. I like to have a weekend off, but I also do that for people who do work midweek and they need the weekends to catch up. But it also means that if you want help, you need to ask your questions maybe in Thursday's class or sometime before Friday, before we all leave. So if you need help on the homework, be sure to start early on it. And the control charting. So we're going to have a common spreadsheet for the whole class, and everybody will have their own tab. And you'll collect your data and you'll update that spreadsheet with your data every week. So every week, your 5 days or 7 days, depending on what you collect, your data will be due to be posted in that spreadsheet. It's nice to have one spreadsheet for the class, so I can go through the tabs real quickly and see who's not updating their data, and so I don't check it every week, but whenever I find some extra time, I'll go in there and I'll look, and if somebody hasn't posted data in a couple of weeks, then they're going to get some points off because they're not keeping up with it. The point of a control chart is to keep up with it on a regular basis. The second advantage of having a single spreadsheet for the whole class is that you can see other people's data too. And you can see how they're formatting their tables. You can see how they're making their control chart and so on. And this is a situation where you want to do what the best example, like you're not copying their data, but you're copying the format of their table and the format of their chart. And so in that situation, we do want you to copy those kinds of things. We want those tables and those charts to look exactly the same. Because when you're reporting, say you're reporting to an agency, they want all of the labs that report to them to give them the exact same format of a report. Yeah, the data is different, but the format is exactly the same. So that's what I would like. Everybody in here, this isn't a time for you to come up with super creative colors and wild fonts and things like that. We want you to format the table and the chart exactly as the directions say, and they should look all identical, but just with different data. There'll be 2 reports. The midterm quality report is right before spring break. So I want to get that off your plate, then you can enjoy your time off. And then we come back, we collect a little bit more data. I'm going to pass your report on to 2 of your peers. So everybody will read 2 other people's reports, and you'll get feedback from 2 of your peers. And then the final quality report will be correcting the mistakes that they found in your papers. So you'll learn a little bit about how to write good constructive feedback for people. That's a skill we haven't really taught much in course. We've taught you how to write lab reports. We really haven't taught you how to write good constructive comments. So you'll be graded on your comments. I'll be grading your comments on your peers' reports, and then your peers will be correcting the mistakes that you found or the things to make it better. And your final quality report, that'll be the bulk of the grade, is how you responded to the criticism and how you documented the changes that you made in your report. These reports are pretty short, maybe 4 or 5 pages. It's very little writing because it's mostly just documenting the data and what it's doing over the semester. Okay. And so it's also not really a very original report. Again, this is a report of a standard control trial process. This isn't like an experiment or a discovery. You're not trying to measure the spectrum of an unknown and describe why you think it's this or why you think it's that. Where you actually have to write a whole lot about why you're making the case that it's this particular compound, not that. This is very routine, should be very similar. The wording in these reports should be very similar. Okay. Doesn't mean you copy somebody, but you look at how these reports are written, and I have an example on Blackboard for you when it comes time to turn in that midterm quality report, and you're like, okay, I see how they're written, and I can write that same way. We talked about attendance. Responsiveness is also part of participation and attendance. So if there's an issue with your data or your report or whatever, and I'm emailing you about it, if you're ghosting me and I don't ever hear back from you for 3 or 4 consecutive emails, then I'll start knocking points off of attendance. I'll let you know that you're in danger of that happening, and then I'll just start cutting because you've got to be able to respond to communication. That's the key. Academic dishonesty, it can ruin your chances of ever working anywhere near a crime lab. So you never want to be, labeled as cutting corners or using other people's work and so on. So don't ever start with other people's, homework assignments or other people's reports. Now the reports, again, your wording needs to be your own, but the structure of the report will be the same. But I'm talking about like starting with somebody else's wording and then just changing a few words here and there. That's plagiarism. So 10 consecutive words without citation is plagiarism. Now there's some prompts that I give you, like the purpose or goal of the report. That I'm not going to count as plagiarism because I've told you this is the goal of this report. So everybody pretty much has those goals set out in their introduction of their report. And also that also includes signing the roster for someone else. Don't do that. I mean, it's not worth your reputation to do that. And the classroom, don't be disruptive, right? And also I did add a thing to the letters of recommendation. I really do want you to learn in community. So even if you made an A, if you never came to class and you just worked on the videos, I don't like that. I don't want that to be your situation. I mean, kudos to you. You learn from YouTube, okay? But I really want to favor community, and I want to get to know you. So if you never come to class, what am I going to write about? They made an A. That's it. I never saw them in class. That's not going to be a great letter. So I don't want to have to be in that situation of saying, I'm asked to write a letter for this person. I don't even know them. I never saw them, so that's, don't put me in that situation. Okay, so that's the syllabus. Any questions before we move on to the intro to forensic science? I'll give you 5 more seconds. Okay. You're going to upset me, though, after class is over and you come up here with the syllabus and I say, what does this mean right here? This is the learning and community part. You say something out loud and 3 other people go, oh, yeah, I had that same question. Yes.
For the control charts?
Yes.
What do you can you clarify what process means?
Okay, process. So maybe you have the whole process of calibrating your GC. And there's a whole lot of measurements that go into that. But then you have a compound that you put in there and say its retention time is the thing that you're charting. Okay, so it's not really focused just on that one compound. It's capturing the repeatability of the whole process. So that the process of the GC running has a lot of things going on. And so, but you still have just one number that's representative of that whole process. So if your column's acting up or the temperatures are off or the flow rate is off, there's a whole lot of things that could be off, and it would affect that retention time. So that's a perfect example of a process being measured by a single number. Now, a lot of times you think of control charts like you weigh a check weight on a balance to see if the balance is still performing okay. Well, that's really not a process. That's just a piece of equipment. And so you could control chart that equipment too. You could control chart ovens to see if their temperature is stable over time. But that's really not a process. But the GC and its operation, that's a whole process. And you could pick a single number that you run every morning, because these things are going all the time. They're on all the time. You pick that one thing, put it in your morning run, and see if it's moved. If it hasn't moved, then your process is stable, and you can start using it. And that saves you a lot of time. Then starting every morning, you're like, well, we're going to calibrate every morning. You're actually introducing variability if you just calibrate on a schedule versus tracking the stability of the process. So, good question. Yes.
When do we submit an idea of what we want to use for the control chart?
I have on Blackboard in the week 1 folder, there's materials, and you click on that, and down at the very bottom, there's a shared spreadsheet. So if you click that, it'll open Excel. It's a web version of Excel. So using Office 365. Now you may need to do that on a campus computer. I don't know about using, it works on my laptop, but I have a Windows machine and Microsoft 365 works great with that. I don't know anything about Macs. I had a Mac first in '87. That was a while ago. But yeah, so you may, if you're a Macintosh person for this particular spreadsheet, you may want to do that on a campus computer, and then you can go in. I've got like 10 examples of data that was used in the past, good ideas, and so you can look at those and you can come up with something original if you want. And we'll talk about the control chart more today in terms of how to select the data. Yeah. Excellent. Anything about the syllabus? Okay, let's jump into the next one. So we're going to stop that video.